Hello one and all, I'm back once again to a video on Summer Spider, so what? This time covering the cut content of Volume 5 of Light Novel. And I've got to say, this is probably the volume I am most excited to cover because there's just so many little details here that I so wish the anime had included, and I'm just so excited to talk about this. But anyway, let's get into this. Let's start with Kumoko's storyline, as she is staring out at Shoko Negishi, aka Sophia, aka Little Baby Bloodsucker, and she just really doesn't recognize the name, like, at all. She's, really trying to remember, okay, my classmates. How many other names can I actually remember? I mean, I remember the name of the girl who bullied me, but Shoko Negishi, I'm drawing a blank. And it does, make sense. For one thing, she was a loner, so she didn't really interact with her classmates that much. But on the other hand, back in Japan, a lot of people referred to Sophia as Rihoko, or Real Horror Girl, as a nickname used to mock her because she was skinny and bony and creepy. So it's possible Kumoko might recognize the nickname, but not the actual name. Curious. But anyway, the much more pressing concern right now is Sophia's stats, because for one thing, she has 75,000 skill points at level 1. Kumoko at level 1 had 100 skill points, which, just really ticks her off and makes her think, Administrator D might just really hate me, which, yeah, she might. I mean, the only reason I can really think why Kumoko would have so few skill points while Sophia had 75,000, I think Shun had 100,000, is because D wanted to see Kumoko struggle, and if, she had given her 7,500, 150,000 skill points, she would have had a much easier life, though I am just so very curious what Kumoko would have done if she actually had, 100,000 skill points. What skills would she have bought? What would she have done differently? Oh, that would have been interesting. It would have been very interesting. I mean, she didn't actually have a skill list. She couldn't actually tell what the skills were doing, what they would do when she bought them. But she could still just ask the world, like, is there an immortality skill? Yes, there is? Okay, I can't afford that. Is there a fire-breathing skill? There is? Alright, let's get that. I don't know, just be a very curious alternate timeline if Kumoko actually had been given a buttload of skill points at the start of the series. But the skill points aren't the only weird thing, because Sophia also has a bunch of very interesting skills, including Vampire, Undying Body, HP Auto Recovery Level 1, Magic Power Perception Level 3, Magic Power Operation Level 3, 5 Senses Enhancement Level 1, and of course M%I = W, the skill that all reincarnators have. And she also has the title Vampire, which is the ruler of the night who lives by sucking the blood of others, very strong but has many weaknesses. Purebreds who are born as vampires are known as progenitors, which is curious because at least one of Sophia's parents is clearly human, but she also has the title progenitor, which you can only get if you are a vampire from birth, though its effect is certainly worth it, as it cancels out all the negative effects of being a vampire, and so that's why she's able to, be out here in the sunlight without any issues, why she doesn't have to drink human blood, why she isn't afraid of garlic, all that fun stuff. So yeah, that makes her seriously broken. Oh, and the title also comes with the skill Undying Body, which increases resistance to all tributes except for light, fire, and rot, and once per day can survive a lethal attack with 1 HP, so yeah, Sophia is just so utterly broken, even as a baby. But Kumoko realizes, wait a minute, sooner or later somebody's gonna realize that kid's a vampire. There's actually an appraisal ceremony that all noble kids do when they turn 10 years old, I think. And, when that happens, people are going to realize, hey, this kid's a vampire, we should probably kill her, which is going to lead to a very sad, miserable life. And Kumiko wonders if that's exactly what Administrator D wanted. She wanted Sophia to be raised up happy and healthy, and then just have all of it stripped away when she had an appraisal ceremony, when someone realized that she was a freaking vampire. So, yeah, D's a jerk. D is seriously a jerk. But anyway, then Kumiko realizes, I've been having a staring contest with the baby for quite a while. Her mother's been trying to talk to me, and all the guards are just kind of standing around watching me. And this is, a really awkward situation, so I'm gonna run away. I love it, I freaking love it, seriously. Kumiko, the nightmare of the labyrinth, the person just slaughtered a bunch of bandits, got uncomfortable being stared at, and ran away. Though, unlike the anime, she does not roll around on the ground a whole bunch. She just kind of, stares at the baby, realizes it's a bad situation, awkward situation, and then bolts for it. And then we get a very interesting moment, one of the most important moments in this volume probably, as Kumiko then eats the corpses of the robbers she killed. And the reason why this is weird is because she wasn't actually planning on taking their bodies. She didn't want to draw any more attention to herself than she already had by using spatial storage to grab them, and yet her parallel minds grabbed the bodies and put them in spatial storage. Yeah, I mean, that's not all that weird. I mean, she already brought a whole bunch of attention to herself by saving them from the bandits and then healing the butler. But them going against her, them doing something she didn't want to do, just really, really bothers her, especially because ever since they got back from Mother, they've been acting very differently. They seem to disagree with her more and more. They don't think the same way she does, and they just act very, very differently, and it's really starting to bother her. In fact, later on, when Kumoko finds out the elves are behind the kidnapping, the parallel mind starts chanting, an elf, an elf, an elf, with this overwhelming sense of hostility and hatred and just raw anger, which Kumoko can't understand. She has no negative feelings towards the elves, but the parallel minds do because they ate Mother's soul, and Mother hated elves because those were the feelings of grandmother. So, interesting. Very, very interesting. And, Kumoko basically stays in town, continues protecting little baby Bloodsucker because she is afraid to go against parallel minds, because she feels like if she goes against them, she doesn't know what'll happen next. So yeah, it's time to hunt some freaking elves. And she doesn't actually have time to do it because Demon Lord Ariel is in the bottom stratum of the Great Elver Labyrinth, and it would take her several days to reach Kumoko where she is, and she doesn't actually even know where Kumoko is. So yeah, she figures she's safe here, at least for a little bit. She can spend some time in the town, keep an eye on little baby Bloodsucker, and deal with the elves that her parallel minds just really, really hate. And as it turns out, protecting little baby Bloodsucker is super easy, barely an inconvenience, because her clairvoyance evolved into panoptic vision, which allows her to use her evil eyes from a distance, so she's able to kill all the ninjas that break into the Lord's mansion using Jinx's evil eye, even though she is miles and miles away. Huzzah! And then she leaves the bodies behind there to warn the family, hey, somebody's trying to kill you. You should put on some better protection. You should guard yourself a little bit better. Even though these ninjas were very, very highly skilled and were able to pass by the guards, break through the windows without a single person even noticing them, well, besides Kumoko. And then we get a chapter from the point of view of Podemos, who uses some rather interesting words to describe these lesser elves who we sent to go capture Sophia, calling them mass-produced, low-cost, inferior items, and says they're different from the high-cost, slightly useful custom-made items, even saying Misoka was a custom-made item that was created as his child, which, yeah, that's weird. That is really, really weird. I mean, light novel says that Podemos basically views all the elves as existing, solely for his purpose, so he views them as literally objects, his possessions, but the way he describes them here doesn't actually sound like people at all, more like clones, like things that were grown in beakers, So yeah, I'm very, very curious about that, and I have so many questions about the elves' breeding. But anyway, then he goes on to say that Misoka was sent to him by the god, and is incredibly useful and knowledgeable, and someday he may even give her a position directly below his own. And then he goes on to say that Misoka will never be able to betray him, because he's basically holding all her students as hostages, which, interesting, very, very interesting. I'm getting to that more down the road, but anyway, then he goes on to say that if Ariel sniffed out his plans, then so has Dustin, the pontiff of the word of God. And it's definitely worrying that he says that Dustin is just as dangerous as Ariel is. I mean, yes, Dustin has a whole religion behind him, but Ariel's stats are at 90,000. She can wipe out an entire army by herself with ease. She can literally eat anything, and yet Dustin is equally as dangerous as her. That is so very, very concerning, and clearly I am underestimating Dustin a whole lot. I mean, his name is Dustin, for God's sake. Though I guess this does happen right after Ariel becomes a demon lord, so it's not like, she has a full army behind her quite yet. Maybe, now in the present, in the Shun timeline, she's more dangerous than Dustin. I'm not sure about that. I'm actually not sure about that. But anyway, the chapter ends with him saying he's going himself to test out the Gloria Type A model, which I guess is his, Terminator body that he's using. I guess he refers to all these mechanical devices as Glorias, so curious. Very, very curious about that. But anyway, then back to Kumoko, she decides to kill a whole bunch of robbers, and there are just so very, very, very many in this town. There's a triple-digit number of robbers, and she just gets so very much juicy experience from killing all of them. Huzzah! In fact, she gained so much experience, she's able to buy 3 new evil eyes: Stealing Evil Eye, Anti-Magic Evil Eye, and Warping Evil Eye, each of which costs her 300 points. Now, Stealing Evil Eye does seal attribute damage, and basically what it does is allows her to seal off her enemy's skills. Or I guess more accurately, it allows her to skill off one single enemy skill, and it takes a very, very long time to work. And her hope is that once it levels up, she'll be able to seal off more skills, and it won't be quite so slow, but yeah, right now it doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, her big goal is to be able to use it to seal status condition nullification, which her enemies have, so therefore poison will actually be able to hurt people again. But given that seal is probably a status condition, she doesn't have a whole lot of hope that's actually going to work out for her. And then there's Anti-Magic Evil Eye, which does anti-magic attribute damage, and this basically makes it harder for opponents to actually start up magic, unlike Dragon Scales and Dragon Barrier, which dampens the power of magic. And it seems like a really useful skill, but she can't actually test it, like, at all, because, all the enemies, all the robbers she's killing, they're so far away they don't have a chance to use magic, and there aren't too many monsters in the world who can actually use magic, so yeah, an interesting skill, but she just really doesn't have the chance to try it out. And then finally there's Warping Evil Eye, which does space attribute damage, and can basically hollow out anything she desires. And since it targets the space itself rather than a person, it's able to overcome a lot of resistance and defense skills. Huzzah! But unfortunately, it's really, really slow, and if the person moves at all, the spell basically breaks. So, yeah, that's bad. But when it actually works, she's able to twist a person's brain tissue and basically hollow them out from the inside. So, oh, that's terrifying. That is such a terrifying, terrifying skill. But anyway, then we flash over Dustin, the pontiff of the Word of God. And he is rather perplexed, trying to figure out why Lady Ariel killed all of his spies that he had hiding among the robbers, among the bandits, and he can't think of any reason why she wanted to protect the land of Sariella, so he's curious. He's very, very curious about this. And I'm also rather curious as well, because he refers to her as Lady Ariel. He refers to this ancient spider as Lady, so curious. I mean, that's reverence, that respect. Why does he talk to her in such a way? I mean, it definitely doesn't seem like they're on, good terms, so I don't think he worships her as a god or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm really, really not sure about that. He also just takes a minute to laugh about the fact that he's at war with Sariella because they are followers of the goddess, and he's, the pontiff of the Word of God, and yet they both worship the same goddess. And it might sound insane and stupid, but this is a world where people, constantly need reasons to go at war and murder one another. So, yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense. It actually makes a whole bunch of sense. But anyway, the pontiff decides he needs some more about the spider, so he decides to send the adventurers who encounter it in the labyrinth after, she came in, killed the snake, and healed all their wounds, to go to the town where, the town of Karen, the town where Kumoko is currently residing, to figure out exactly what's going on and to see what she does if she actually recognizes those adventures. Which just makes things so very, very much worse for the lord of the town, who is just, so very, very confused about all of this. First there were bandits, then there were kidnappings, then his wife and child were attacked, then they were saved by a spider, who his wife insists is the divine beast, basically the servant of the goddess Sariella, and then that night a bunch of robbers were found dead in his home, with no apparent cause of death, and then over the next couple of days, all the robbers in the county just kinda up and disappeared on them. I guess that's because Kumoko killed them from a distance, then teleported in, grabbed their bodies, and ate them. So, Kumoko has now eaten a triple-digit number of humans. That's, yeah, that's unpleasant. That's rather unpleasant. And just to make things so much more confusing for Lord of the Town, he then finds out that Kumoko had decided to set up a camp outside of the town, and then a bunch of adventurers from Oat showed up, encountered Kumoko, and told everyone, "Hey everyone, that's the spider we met in the labyrinth. She's actually really cool. She saved our lives, and she even healed our wounds. She's super nice, and she likes fruit." And just to make things so much worse, his wife also sprang a theory this was the divine beast, the servant of the goddess Sariella, and he can't really, contradict her because that would make him be seen as a heretic, so he just has to kind of let the rumors grow and spread and fester, even though he knows that she's actually the nightmare from the Great Elder Labyrinth, and she has killed a bunch of people, and at any point she can turn the town and murder all of them. So, yeah, that's bad. That's very, very bad. And when he asks his butler, when he asks the mayor's office's opinion on this, he says the beast is wicked yet honorable, which seems, rather contradictory, until a subordinate bursts in to announce Nightmare just healed a deathly ill patient. Yay! I mean, that's good for the town, but at the same time, it just makes things so much more confusing for the Lord. Poor guy. Meanwhile, Kumoko is really trying to figure out, okay, why is everybody worshiping me and giving me offerings? How exactly did this happen? And basically what happened was the adventurers she encountered back in the Great Elder Labyrinth found her in her nest. Well, they kind of ran into her after she teleported back into her nest. And then they somehow managed to convince the other adventurers they were with not to murder her. And then they offered her some fruit. I guess because they remember that, after she saved their lives, she grabbed some of their fruit and ran away. Or she took it as payment, whatever. Either way, she really likes fruit. So they decided to try giving her fruit again. And she accepted it. And they're like, "Hey, this is a really friendly spider." And then they went back into town, told everyone, "Hey, the spider's nice, it heals our wounds, and it really likes fruit, so try giving it some fruit." And that's basically where everything, just went to complete and utter heck. And at first, then people were praying to her were just rather small adventurers praying for safety and devout followers of the goddess, just stuff like that. But then a mother showed up with her crying daughter begging for help, which, the child definitely needed because she had liver cancer. And this is one of my favorite moments in the entire light novel. I know it sounds awful. I know it sounds awful, but just the world building here was so utterly, utterly fascinating. Basically, the child has liver cancer because the child is poor and ate a whole bunch of garbage, a whole bunch of really essentially poisonous food, which gave her the title Foul Feeder. And this essentially protects her digestive organs from damage from eating bad food, but the liver wasn't able to handle all the toxins and is now failing, and the mother's in the same situation. She's also dying from various organ failure and liver cancer. And there's not a whole lot that healing magic can do to stop cancer, so Kumoko decides to do a rather unorthodox healing method. She puts them to sleep, hollows out their organs, and then used healing magic to generate new ones. I am not joking. I am not joking. Somehow that worked. Somehow the pain didn't kill them. Somehow they managed to survive that without dying. And then, they went back to town, told everyone about it. And then all the sick and injured showed up begging to be treated as well, praying to her and basically worshiping her as the divine beast of the goddess. And for the record, the real divine beast of the goddess was probably Ariel, since she actually had the title Ancient Divine Beast. And she's also a spider. So very, very curious about that. But anyway, she decides to heal the sick and the wounded. And she was actually rewarded pretty well for this. First off, they give her lots and lots of fruit, which... the adventurers said that she liked fruit, so they gave her fruit. Huzzah! So that's also really, the only thing they actually have in this town. It turns out followers of the goddess are all vegetarians, which, interesting detail, very, very interesting detail. But she also is rewarded with a whole bunch of titles and skills for her efforts. She gets the titles Rescuer, Medicine, Alchemist, Saint, Savior, and Guardian, which, seriously, before I begin into this, Kumoko is recognized by this world as being both a saint and a savior. She has eaten literally hundreds of people, but the world has still recognized her as a saint. Oh, I love it. I freaking love it. Her first title is Guardian, which is acquired by protecting a certain number of people, and greatly increases their defense and resistance abilities, with the description reading a title awarded to those who protect others. Her best guess is she got this protecting the town from all the robbers she killed. Huzzah! Though this also comes with the skills Shieldsmanship, which, feels kind of useless for her because she doesn't actually use the shield, because she's a spider. I don't know, maybe when she becomes an arachne later on, she'll eventually get a shield that she can use. I'm not sure about that. It just feels like a very, very strange title, for a very, very strange skill for her to get. Anyway, though, her next title is Medicine Alchemist, which is acquired by using a certain quantity of medicine and strengthens the effectiveness of medicine, with the description reading, a title awarded to those who use medicine, and this comes with medicine synthesis and healing magic, but she already maxed out both of them, so it's kind of a useless title for her. Oh well. Her next few, though, are really interesting. Rescuer, Saint, and Savior, as they all have the same acquisition conditions, basically acquire a certain number of purification points, and these are acquired by doing good deeds. For Kumoko, those good deeds were, just healing so very, very many people, because she has more MP than the entire town basically combined, so she can basically keep curing people again, and again, and again, and each time she did it, she gained some purification points, which allowed her to get Rescuer, then Saint, and finally Savior. Huzzah! First off, Rescuer strengthens healing magic and reads a title awarded to those who save others. Then Saint drastically strengthens the effectiveness of healing magic, and the description reads a title awarded to those who save many others. And finally, Savior drastically strengthens capacity for light attribute, a title awarded to those who save countless others. I love it. I freaking love it. And with these titles also come the skills Light Magic, Holy Light Magic, Miracle Magic, Hero, and Charity. Light magic manipulates light, and holy light magic is its advanced form. Miracle magic is an upgraded form of recovery magic, and she's actually rather confused why she didn't get it when she maxed out healing magic, but basically it's so powerful it can heal anyone who's not dead. So, interesting. Very, very interesting. And the next up, she has the skill Hero, which... Oh, I love it. I freaking love it. She's eaten a triple-digit number of human beings, and the world has recognized her as being a hero. I freaking love it. Though I do need to clarify, this is much different from the title Hero, which only one person in the entire world can have at a time. Right now it's Julius, then in the future it's going to be Shun. And what this basically does is multiply all her stats by 100 times her own level and boost her resistances. So, very, very impressive skill, though rather similar to the Demon Lord skill, which she already has and got way, way back during her, I think, time against the giant monkeys. So yeah, that was end of Volume 1, start of Volume 2. Interesting. Though her next skill, which she got from acquiring the Savior title, may actually be more interesting, Charity, as it is a ruler class skill, her 6th ruler class skill at this point, and applies HP ultra fast recovery to user and anyone recognized as the user's allies, which Oh, that's a broken skill. That is such a broken skill. I mean, Kumoko's a loner, so it doesn't really affect her all that much. But if, say, one day she were to join the Demon Lord's army, then everyone in the Demon Lord's army would have HP ultra fast recovery, and they'd essentially be invincible. So, yeah, such a broken skill. Oh, I love it, I love it. Though I am rather curious, it is a ruler class skill, so would acquiring it have boosted her taboo level if it wasn't already at level 10? I'm not sure about that, because that'd be, rather interesting. I mean, this is a skill acquired basically by doing good work, by doing good deeds. Could actually be the case where doing enough good deeds, where saving enough people actually gets you taboo. I'm curious what the word of God would think about that. I mean, I can't imagine there are all that many, if any, people in the entire world who have the skill Charity. Maybe just the Pontiff. Curious about that. Very, very curious. But anyway, this also comes with the title Ruler of Charity, which boosts her miracle magic all the way up to 10 right off the bat, and gives her the skill Offer, which gets no explanation. Curious about that. Anyway, this increases her MP, magic, and resistance stats, and gives a positive correction to support skill proficiencies, basically allowing her levels up much, much faster. Huzzah! She also just takes a second here to drop the bombshell that she laid a bunch of eggs back in the labyrinth, and she wonders if the skill will affect them as well, which, curious, very, very curious about that. Before going off into a tangent about how she's bad at dealing with people, and back in Japan, whenever anyone tried to talk to her, she'd freeze up, have no idea what to say, and eventually they'd get mad and walk away from her, which, oh god, poor Kumoko. She's just so bad at dealing with people, to the point where everyone thought she was just, so cool and sophisticated and above them. Oh, I love this girl. I freaking love this girl. And then she comments about Faye, saying that Faye's bullying was really, really mild and didn't bother her very much at all, which I love it. I freaking love it. Seriously, Faye thinks she's going through purgatory, essentially, that she was turned to a dragon because of all her awful, awful bullying, and she wants so badly to apologize, but the victim of her bullying really didn't care at all about it. Oh god, just poor, poor Faye. Anyway, though, Kumoko is still really bad at dealing with people, and even though she has now learned the language of this world, which she acquired by spreading her thread throughout town and listening in everyone's conversation, and then using parallel minds basically to decipher the language, which, brilliant move on your part there, Kumoko, she still doesn't actually talk to anyone because she'd have no idea what to say, and is worried she'd basically say, so yeah, about this weather we're having, that's some crazy weather, isn't it? Oh god, that would have been just... Seriously, imagine if you go up to talk to your spider god, your spider deity, and it basically says, so how's the weather today? I think you might truly believe that you've lost your freaking mind. Anyway, though, Kumoko is just, super bad dealing with people, but thankfully the Lord, Sophia's father, has forbidden anyone from entering her forest, forbidden anyone from going near her, which basically means that she can, still be alone, still be in private when she needs it, when she's had her fill of dealing with people for the day. Huzzah! Unfortunately, things then take a rather bad turn, as the Kingdom of Oats demands that Kumoko be handed over to them, which is stupid, is so utterly stupid, it actually flabbergasted the Lord of the Land. He's trying to figure out what is wrong with these people. It's a monster. We don't own it. Nobody's tamed it. It just chose to nest here. We have no control over where it lives or what it does. So he does definitely get why they want her so badly. I mean, she can heal basically any wound, any disease, any illness with the flick of her wrist or the snap of her spider size, whatever. And, if they get that, if the Kingdom of Oats actually has that at their disposal, that really does change the face of warfare. There's also the fact that the Kingdom of Oats and the Kingdom of Seriella just really do not get along at all, because the Kingdom of Oats are, diehard believers in the Word of God, while the Seriella are followers of the goddess, and they basically hate one another and they want to keep killing one another, basically, constantly. Yeah, humans really love killing each other in this world. It's actually ridiculous. Anyway, though, a bunch of people from different countries came over to try and convince Kumoko to come to their land, and it just did not go well for them. Some tried luring her out with food, which she just grabbed and ran away. Others tried using telepathy to talk to her, but she just ran away, and she really only comes out when they're sick and wounded that need her attention, that need her healing powers. And then there's the official emissary from Oats, who might actually be the worst person in this entire series. Seriously, in a series full of awful people, Mr. D, Hugo, Yuri, this guy might actually be the worst person ever. I mean, the Lord of the Land actually needs to be nice to him, because if he's bad to an official emissary, a bad to an official guest, that gives the Kingdom of Oats an excuse for war. But this dude is just so awful. So bad, in fact, that they realized that he was sent here for the sole purpose of just taking off the Lord of this land until eventually, war gets declared between the two countries. That is just... That's quite a plan. That's quite a plan. And I'm not actually sure if this guy is aware of that plan, or if he just thinks, he is that important. He's just that amazing that people want him here to negotiate and get the spider brought back to Oats. And this dude just basically complains about everything. He complains about how awful the food is, because it's an all-vegetarian diet and he basically only eats meat. He complains the maids are nagging him because he's smoking in front of the Lord's infant daughter. He complains his room smells bad because he's smoking in his room. He is just such a jerk. Such a jerk. God, I hate this man. I truly hate this man. And the Lord basically says, I can only hope that no problems occur before he finally leaves. And then the official emissary from Oats dies. Oh no, so sad. If only it hadn't happened. And the Lord very quickly realizes what happened. Basically, the emissary sent his men to go attack the spider to either take her by force or kill her. And then Kumoko murdered all those men, and then murdered the official emissary from Oats, even though he was still in his room, miles and miles away from the spider. Oh man, you dumb. You just so dumb. I mean, seriously, this dude, when he first met Kumoko, said, "You are my pet now, obey me." I'm actually amazed that Kumoko didn't kill this man much sooner. Seriously, I actually think it would probably been better if, Kumoko had just killed him as soon as he wandered in the forest and tried to force her to obey him. I think it would have made, war much less likely happen, but war did happen, and she realized, oh my god, this war is happening because of me. I mean, okay, she's an excuse because Oates just really wanted to go to war against Seriella, but still, she was the excuse they used, so she feels a bit guilty inside to go in and lend a helping hand. She is the divine beast after all, plus, battlefields are full of soldiers, and soldiers are just chock full of that juicy EXP she wants. So she goes to the battlefield, and it is quite packed. Seriella has 42,000 soldiers, Oates has 53,000 soldiers, and she describes as being like Comic-Con, though obviously she never went to Comic-Con because a number of people would have freaked her out, and she's freaked out right now. I love it. I mean, she can kill every last person here without even trying all that hard, but just the number of people just freaking her out because she is that bad dealing with others. Oh, I love you, Kumoko. I freaking love you. Anyway, she analyzed the battlefield and realizes, yeah, these soldiers, they're not actually using any formations or strategy at all. They're basically just charging into one another and hoping for the best. So, yeah, because of that, Seriella has absolutely no chance of winning. They have no chance of beating Oates because they have less soldiers. So she decides to go in. She flies above the battlefield and casts a single dark magic attack that killed 3,000 Oates soldiers. And this is followed by a very long, very awkward silence as everyone just kind of stares up and looks at Kumoko, trying to figure out exactly what happened, trying to figure out why 3,000 people just died. And then after a while, a single Oates soldier says, "Oh god, no," and just bolts. He runs out of there as fast as he can. And then all the other Oates soldiers realize, oh, we should run, and they bolt. They run as fast as they can. I mean, some of them stay, some of them keep fighting, but their will is basically broken, and the soldiers Seriella are able to chase them down and win the war. Huzzah! Unfortunately, then Demon Lord Ariel teleports in, and oh, that's bad. That is very bad. And then we get a chapter that basically explains how Ariel got here. Essentially, a few months ago, one of her children called for help, saying that a child had broken free from her control, which, had never happened before, but wasn't necessarily impossible. As she says, there are certainly less system bugs these days, but some of them are still hanging around from when the whole thing started, which, oh my god, that line raises so very many questions about this series. Seriously, Ariel was there when the system was first implemented. What was that like? What was it like when there were still bugs in the system that were, a daily occurrence? Oh, I so want to see that. I so want to see that. Anyway, though, then she encountered Kumoko and found her appraisal to be blocked, which means that Kumoko had a ruler class skill, which is something even the Queen Terror Attack didn't yet have. So she decides to ask politely if Kumoko will stop the attack on the Queen. And I literally mean politely. She actually says, "Hi there, I'm your grandma. Sorry to ask this right off the bat, but could you stop attacking the Queen now, please?" She calls herself Grandma. She says sorry and says please. This is Ariel. This is the freaking Demon Lord. This is the oldest of the divine beasts. This is literally a being who would wipe out armies with a single flick of her wrist. And she is being so polite, so nice to Kumoko. Oh my god, I love it. I freaking love it. Seriously, how was that scene not in the anime? I would have so loved to see that. Anyway, though, then she took Kumoko's, waving her arms, trying to explain she didn't understand, as a refusal, so she killed her. But the attack on the Queen kept going on, an attack that directly eroded the soul, which no skill should have been able to do, and the Queen died. Oh no! And this actually really did upset Ariel. Losing a kin who had fought alongside her for so many years tore open a hole in her heart, and she was just filled with this overwhelming sense of sadness and loss. And then it very quickly evolved in anger, and she decided to go murder Kumoko. Thankfully, though, Gakuli, the Earth Dragon, showed up, as well as a whole bunch of other Earth Dragons, who basically said, "You know what, Ariel, you are the oldest of the divine beasts. Don't think it's time you should, just die already? Make way for the new in this world?" And as it turns out, the Earth Dragons have great reverence for Kumoko's strength, and the fact that she was able to slay the Earth Dragon Araba, even though she's only about a year old at the time. As it turns out, Earth Dragons just really, really admire strength, even when it's being used to murder them, which... interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, Ariel said at one point that the Earth Dragons had the blood of samurai in them, and I definitely see that here. And the Earth Dragons aren't just preaching empty words here. They believe it as well. They basically say, we're the oldest of our kind, so we should die soon as well. And they want to die fighting the eldest divine beast. And then once the fight's finally over, they say, I am satisfied. Oh, I love that. And this was apparently a very, very long fight. I mean, Ariel said that it's so dark in the bottom of the labyrinth, there's no sunlight, so she doesn't actually know how long the fight was. But I'm fairly certain that she was fighting those Earth Dragons for the entire time Kumoko was the Divine Beast, for all the time she spent in, right outside the town, healing the people, killing the robbers. So days or even weeks might have passed while she was fighting them at the bottom of the bottom stratums. And once the dust settles, Ariel is saddened, deeply, deeply saddened that another one of the elders has fallen, especially it happened by her hand. And then she starts gathering up the corpses because it's her principle to never leave food behind, except that's not a principle. That's never been her principle before. And she realized that she, the Lord of Gluttony, is being consumed by the attack, and that she and Kumoko's body brain are melding together. And as a result, she gets Kumoko's memories of Japan, memories of Kumoko's reincarnation, memories of everything that Kumoko's been through. And she also becomes strangely optimistic, just like Kumoko. And it's just, seriously freaks her out. And then Black shows up and he basically says that her tone and actions are like Kumoko's, while her consciousness is still very clearly Ariel, but he's not sure, when this process is finished, who exactly she'll be in the end. And then, they start talking about Administrator D, and Black uses a very interesting choice of words, saying that Administrator D invited the reincarnated people into this world. Yeah, it didn't really seem like an invite, more so she forcibly grabbed their souls and threw them in this world, but... I don't know, I'm just very, very curious about that. Even Ariel is kind of bothered by that word, invited. But all that Ariel really knows about Mr. D is that she is a god that's far, far more powerful than Black is, which makes it all the more surprising when Black says he's going to teleport her directly to Kumoko's location, even though it'll tick off D, and she will punish him for it. Which, curious, very, very curious about that. And as for the reason why he's doing it, he says it's a favor to his old friend's daughter, so... who exactly is Ariel's parent that Black would be an old friend of? I'm very, very curious about that. But anyway, so he teleports her to the battlefield, and then things get just super, super chaotic as all the soldiers start running for their lives, having absolutely no idea what the frick is going on. And just to make sure that Kumoko can't run away again, Ariel sets up a divine dragon barrier over the entire battlefield to prevent any complex magic from being cast, so all Kumoko can really do is shoot, weak low-level light magic at her, which does some damage, but Ariel quickly recovers, so instead she tries putting up some earth magic as a wall to stall her, but Ariel eats it. She eats the earth because she has the skill Gluttony, a ruler class skill, which allows the user to eat anything and stock it away as pure energy. And I do literally mean anything. That includes magic, barriers, rocks, literally anything. She can eat absolutely freaking anything. So yeah, she's broken. She is such an overwhelmingly broken character. Kumoko even says she's like a character from power creep ridden shonen manga, which... that's accurate. That's definitely a little bit accurate. Thankfully, Kumoko's managed to stay alive up to this point by basically murdering all the soldiers around her. Basically, all the soldiers keep dying from the shockwaves of their attacks. And when they do, she gets their experience, and she keeps leveling up and healing again and again and again as her body just, keeps getting destroyed. And then as all hope seems lost, a child appears in the battlefield. Little itty-bitty baby Julius, whose stats are only 400, which... oh god, that's pathetic. That is so, so pathetic. I mean, in terms of, fighting power among humans, it's actually stronger than most of the soldiers on the battlefield, but Kumoko's stats are like between 20 and 30,000, and Ariel's stats are about 90,000, so... it seems like there's not a whole lot you can do, except the hero title has the hidden ability that temporarily grants the ability to defeat the Demon Lord, meaning that Julius is probably the only person in the entire world right now who can actually kill the Demon Lord, and Ariel is just, very, very afraid of him, very hesitant to go anywhere near him because she knows that, she can actually die here, she can actually truly die if she were to fight this child. Not guaranteed, but there's a very good chance she would lose his fights. It actually kind of reminds me of Triple F class Trash Hero, where the Demon Lord's ability is that his level is the same as the hero's. So if the hero's really weak, he'll really be weak. If the hero's really strong, he'll really be strong. And it's done this way to foster the power of friendship. Huzzah! But anyway, then when the army summons a giant fireball, which wouldn't actually do anything because it wouldn't be able to pass through Ariel's barrier, but distracts Julius long enough for Ariel to cast Abyss Magic, which smashes the soul to bits until it can't be reincarnated again, so... yeah, that's some serious stuff right there. That is some serious, serious magic right there. And then Kumoko dies. Oh no! but thankfully before this, she used egg laying to create inferior copies of herself with the intention of planting her parallel minds into them. Yeah, as it turns out, she was really freaked out about the parallel minds, about how they were just acting so different, how they became different people after eating Mother's soul. So her plan was basically to lay a bunch of eggs, let them hatch, and let the parallel minds basically be transferred into them. I mean, she could have also just turned off the parallel mind skill, but that would have essentially killed them, and she would have felt a little bit guilty about that. And what's more so, she was worried that if she did that, the parallel minds would basically merge with her, and then she would have been corrupted. She would have become the same as them. So she figured it'd just be easier to transplant their entire consciousness into these new bodies, and it worked! Yay! And she's able to transfer her own consciousness into there as well. Double yay! Though, she is, much, much weaker than she was before. She's only the size of a normal Earth tarantula, and all her stats are at 3. Not 3,000, 3, that's it. Though they do still have the same maximum, she just can't access that because her new spider body is just too weak. She can evolve, but her stamina is only at 3. If she tries it, she will certainly evolve. So, yeah, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. And then Black shows up, or she calls him Gully Gully, and he's using a skill created by Minister D to basically communicate with her, translating it between her language and his own. Though he says he's implementing it by force, there's no way for Kumoko to do the same thing, which, definitely unfortunate, because she is, somewhat familiar with the language of this world after, last couple weeks of trying to learn it while she was outside the town, while she was using her parallel minds, but she still only understands, every other word that's being said, so that's unfortunate. She's also, just super bad at talking, though thankfully Black's willing to do most of the talking in this conversation. As he apologizes for sending Ariel to try and murder her, saying it was a favor for an old friend, and then offers her up an apology in the form of all the dragons that Ariel had just killed, saying, "These dragons fought for your sake. I am certain they would be honored to offer their bodies and blood as well," which, Kumiko is just so utterly confused by all of that. She has no idea who these dragons are or why they fought for her, but she is really hungry, so she accepts. And then Black promises not to interfere again, and this conversation continues basically how it did in the anime, just much later. He asks her to stop interfering with Ariel, but she basically responds, "I can't. I have no control over what Body Brain does. I've lost a connection to him." He asks her to basically stop interfering in this world and live off in secret somewhere, because she's already become one of this world's most powerful creatures, and her every action can plunge the world into complete and utter chaos. But again, she has to say no, because the world's basically on the verge of collapse, and the people here aren't really doing anything to stop it, so she needs to do something. And apparently she does have a plan of her own, a plan to somehow, some way save the world. And Black basically accepts this and leaves, though he does give a final warning that if she goes against him, he will stop her, which... oh, that's ominous. That's very, very ominous. But Kumiko is more important thing he's focused on right now. Mainly the fact that she has to eat faster than she's evolving. She has to eat the dragons while she's evolving, while she's growing, while she's changing, or she'll starve to death. And she comes really close to running out of food, but thankfully she managed to properly evolve into a level 1 arachne, with all her stats being between 30 and 40,000. And for some reason she lost the swimming skill, which, strange. Very strange. But the big thing that the reason why she wanted this is that she now has a human body growing out of her spider head and has 2 brains that are thinking in unison with 2 separate fields of vision, which, just super helpful because before this point, when she was a spider, she basically had to turn her entire body to look to the left, to look to the right. Now she can just use her neck to turn. So much easier. And she has boobs, which, was very important to her because up to this point, she wasn't actually sure whether or not she was a female spider or a male spider. And now she has confirmation. Yay! And we also get confirmation at this point, she is around 2 years old. So in 2 years, she's almost the level of a freaking demon lord. Oh, you scare me, Kumiko. You scare me. And then as for the other 999 eggs, well, they start hatching, and she decides to give them some food and leave them in the hands of the parallel minds, which is such an overwhelmingly bad idea. And then she leaves and starts wondering, okay, why exactly do I want to evolve into an arachne again? I mean, I want to be able to communicate with people, but I'm just, super bad at talking to people, so yeah, I should probably just get out of here. I should probably just leave. And then she realizes the town she was guarding is on fire because Oates sent a separate force to, burn to the ground, and the elves are using this as an opportunity to attack the Lord's mansion. So, yeah, that's bad. That's very bad. So she decides to go and save the day once again. But anyway, then we get a chapter from the butler's point of view, from Arzof's point of view, and he says he's blessed to serve such a wonderful man, a man worthy of putting his life on the line for, a master with such a strong sense of duty. He refuses to flee until all his people have safely evacuated, which basically means he's gonna die. He is definitely gonna die. And his wife is, standing by his side. She refuses to leave as well. She wants to die with a man she loves. And the butler also just, casually mentions in his own head that he is in love with his master's wife, which, interesting? Very interesting little detail right there. But anyway, then they order him to flee with their daughter to make sure she's safe. And that was a pretty good decision on their part, as he is truly, truly devoted to carrying out his orders. Even when he's shot full of arrows and breaks his arm, he still stands up with his sword drawn, ready to fight, ready to do whatever he can to protect Little Miss. And she responds to this by biting him, and as she does, a power flows through him as his mind is intoxicated by a sort of sweet numbness. And then he slaughters some freaking elves! Woo! Oh, I love seeing the anime. I freaking love this scene in the anime. Just the utter madness on his face as he just slaughters these elves one after the other. Oh, I love you, Butler. I freaking love you. Unfortunately, though, he is no match for Podemos, who orders that Sophia be killed, as she will cause nothing but trouble in the future, and even says he'll just tell Oka that she got caught up in the battle and died before they reached her. But once again, the butler stands up, refusing to leave, refusing to back away, doing everything in his power to protect the young miss, even knowing she's a vampire. He doesn't care. He swore he would protect her, and he's going to do it. Oh, I love you, man. I freaking love you. You are the best guy in the series. You are seriously the best guy in the series. And then as Podemos goes to kill him, he's attacked by a white nightmare as Kumoko teleports in and punches him in the face. Oh, dude, you definitely deserve that. You definitely deserve that. And then she heals the butler and decides to call him Mira because she also can't pronounce his name correctly. Oh, Kumoko, you are seriously my spirit animal. And even after that, though, he is still really wary of her, which, definitely makes sense, because as she's looking down at little baby bloodsucker, Kumoko starts wondering, babies look really soft. I bet they would taste really, really delicious. Maybe I just get, a little bite off her arm. I can heal it afterwards. She wouldn't mind. Thankfully, though, Sophia chooses that exact moment to wet herself, which ruins Kumoko's appetite, and she hands him over to the butler as she goes to fight Podemos, only for her to realize that when she tries to praise him, it says cannot be appraised. And this seriously freaks her out, because that's a new one. Before, every time she tried to praise someone and she couldn't, it always said appraisal block. That's a result of a person having a ruler class skill, using their ruler privileges to block appraisal. But cannot be appraised is something completely different. Even when the appraisal is normally blocked by a ruler class skill, she can use the wisdom skill to basically override it and still look at their stats. But cannot be appraised is something completely different, and it really freaks her out. Makes her realize, okay, this dude here, Podemos, might actually be more dangerous than Ariel. So she decides to run. Unfortunately, Podemos then unleashes anti-technique barrier, which makes it feel like the entire world is changing, as if they've been cut off from reality, and then all of her active skills, Divine Dragon Power, Battle Divinity, and Magic Divinity are all suddenly cancelled, as she realizes this must be a barrier that rejects the system itself, so super dangerous, and she's gonna die very, very quickly. Thankfully, though, while she's fighting, she's able to test her skills, and she realizes thought acceleration is still working, but when she tries to make threat, it falls apart as soon as it leaves her body. So basically, skills that work entirely within the body still work, but skills that work outside the body don't work at all. And while she can't appraise herself, she figures she's about 10% of her full strength, though that's not entirely accurate. I mean, it is for her speed, because the speed stats affect her muscles, but her defense, which basically affects, the outer layers of her skin, is much weaker. So the closer skill is to affecting an inner part of her body, the stronger it'll be, but the closer it is to the outside layer to her skin, the weaker it'll be. Though she figures it's still probably going to be a fairly even match, because Podemos can't use any of his skills either. And then when she tries to cut him, her scythe breaks, as she realizes that his entire body is made of metal. So she decides to throw a very expensive looking vase at him, and that does absolutely nothing. I'm not sure why she thought that would do something, but hey, it was worth trying. And then his arm turns into a gun, and he starts firing regular bullets at her, so she lets herself get shot in the head to distract him, so she can punch him again, and then he'll waste all his bullets firing at the wall. Unfortunately, this does almost no damage to him, and then he switches to plasma bullets, which are a bit slower, but, way more dangerous, way more powerful. So out of desperation, she tries out all her evil eyes, and finally warped evil eye works, because it affects inside his body where the barrier is weaker. Huzzah! Unfortunately, now that he knows that she can use the warped evil eye, he won't stand still long enough for her to use it again, so yeah, it's gonna be a very, very close fight, until the magical demon lord Ariel pops in. And she's acting so very, very different from her old self that Podemos doesn't actually believe it's her until she kills him. Which, makes sense. Ariel's always been a rather serious person, kind of a scaredy cat too, and this acting is just completely out of character of her, so yeah, it makes a lot of sense why Podemos wouldn't have actually believed that was her. And then she turns to Kumoko, who, is just super terrified of this demon lord who came in and killed the guy that she couldn't even put a scratch in. Though instead of fighting, Ariel basically requests a truce, even speaking in Japanese, and calling her by her own Japanese name, which, interesting, definitely interesting for her, as she basically explains she would feel bad killing her, because the body brain has become part of her, and she'd feel bad for killing, what's essentially part of her own body. Though she also says she's a bit scared of just how immortal Kumoko is, and is worried if they keep fighting, eventually she'll be the one to die. Seriously, Kumoko, you've been alive for 2 years, and this demon lord is utterly terrified of you. Oh my god, I love it. I freaking love it. They then all teleport outside the town as Butler and Baby Bloodsucker watch their home burn to the ground as Ariel tries to recruit Kumoko because she's basically unkillable, or at least Ariel thinks she's unkillable. If Ariel tried to actually use Abyss magic on her again, it would probably kill her because all the eggs hatch and she doesn't think she can transfer consciousness again into, basically a hatched spider, so she figures it's a really good deal. Basically, she's free to try and kill Ariel whenever she wants, while Ariel won't try to kill her because, she thinks she can't kill her. And what's more, the deal was, let's join forces, not serve under me, so they basically be equal, so that's a great deal, and Kumiko decides to take her hand. She agrees to accept the deal. And at this point, the butler turns around and asks, as politely as possible, "Who are you people? And why did you save me?" And as Ariel tries very, very poorly to explain exactly what's going on here, she then turns to little Sophia and asks her name, to which the butler tries to say as respectfully as possible, Madam Demon Lord, she's a baby. She can't speak yet. So Ariel uses telepathy to link them all together and explain very, very badly that Sophia is reincarnated from another world. And then Sophia basically says that she is genuinely, genuinely sorry for turning the butler into a vampire because now we can never live a human life again. And the butler is in fact genuinely sorry they couldn't protect her and is in fact grateful he's a vampire because now, not only did he survive the fight, but he continued to protect her. And there's this really, really moving moment as he basically swears to protect her for as long as she lives. Oh my god, I love it, I love it. It's actually so emotional that Ariel burst into tears, just so moved by it. Oh, I love it. I freaking love it. And they don't agree right away to team up with Ariel, but they do agree to basically a trial period. They're going to travel with her to the capital of Sariel together, and once they get there, then they'll decide if they want to work with her moving forward. Huzzah! Meanwhile, Kumiko thinks back to the parallel mind she transplanted into the baby spiders, and the other 999 spiders that are still back in the labyrinth, and she wonders it's fine, just leave them alone, but she decides, what's the worst that could happen? And as it turns out, it was a very, very bad idea, as the last paragraph of the volume basically says, I would live to regret making that choice. I sorely underestimated just how strange for me my parallel minds had become, and in the future I would end up paying for it dearly. And then we flash over to the parallel minds, as one of them says, alright you guys, let's start our preparations. We've got lots of work to do if we want to wipe out all of human and demon kind. At which point a whole bunch of other spiders all cheer out, yeah, in unison. So, concerning. Very, very concerning. Though I do think I kind of get where they're coming from. Basically, Humo said at one point that if she just killed a bunch of people, a bunch of monsters, a bunch of demons, she'd be able to stop the world from being destroyed. So I think that's what the parallel minds are trying to do. Basically, if they can kill all of human and demon kind, then the world won't be on the verge of destruction anymore and they'll be able to live. Yay, I think. And I'm guessing that'd be, a major plot point if we ever get season 2, or when I eventually get around to reading volume 6. So very excited about that. Very, very excited about that. And that's basically the end of the Kumiko timeline. Let's move on to the Shun timeline. Huzzah! And we begin with Shun and his party on the way to the barrier to figure out exactly Hugo's plan on breaking through this thing. And each of them is accompanied by 2 elves, stewards, who are assigned to everyone in the party to look after their needs, when really they're just here to keep an eye on them, make sure Shun and his friends don't do anything too stupid. And they refuse to basically answer any questions. Even when Shun says, hey, what's your names? They respond, you don't need to know our names. Oh, they are awful people. They are such awful people. All elves are, really. But anyway, along the way, Hiron's mentioned he's actually heard of Tagawa and Asuka, the reincarnators turned adventurers, and they're actually rather famous. Everyone's saying they're going to be the next S-tier adventurer, so yeah, they are next level. They are next level. I mean, their stats are lower than Shun's and only really around Katia's level, but at the same time, they have way more practical experience and they should not be underestimated. For one thing, Tagawa's sword is made of the claw of a thunder dragon, while Asuka's staff is made from the bone of a wind dragon. And while they didn't actually kill these dragons themselves, they were just part of larger parties that took them down, they still have fought dragons and lived. And that's really saying something, especially since in the entire time Hiron's was in the hero's party, he never once fought a dragon before. He never once killed a dragon before. So yeah, they are the real deal. The novelist takes a minute here to explain that magic swords are basically weapons created by monster parts, and as a result, they are imbued with powers of the monsters. For example, Tagawa's magic sword can shoot purple lightning because it comes from a lightning dragon. Tagawa's also just super weirded out that Katia is speaking in such a ladylike manner as he remembers her as, a gaming bro from Japan, and she explains, I was raised as the daughter of a duke. Of course I've changed. Of course I'm a different person. And this just absolutely blows Shun's mind. Like, Katia, you're not still my old gaming buddy from Japan? You're different from the person you were back then? I never would have thunk it. Yes, Shun, that is because you are an idiot. You are an utter and complete idiot. And after they confirm there's no way for the barrier to be broken, they wonder maybe, oh, Hugo brainwashed some elves, or maybe he's planning on breaking through the teleportation point. Maybe we should shut it down. And the elves are just super, super arrogant here, saying they would never succumb to brainwashing, and there's no need to shut down the teleport points because no human could ever outsmart them, before bad-mouthing Anna. And then Faye asks the question we're all wondering, are these guys really worth defending? The answer? No. No, they absolutely are not. As we then get a chapter from Anna's point of view called The Half-Elves, Half-Life, and she says she has very vague, incomplete memories of the village, which she thinks is her subconscious defending her, but I think it's actually more likely that Podemos put some sort of spell on her that affected her memories and made it so when she left the village, she forgot all about it, so that way she wouldn't be able to spill their secrets to the outside world. She also claims to have no memory of her parents, which I find just super, super interesting, because the elves believe in elf supremacy. Basically, they believe that all their races are inferior and vulgar. So how exactly does an elf have a child with a human? It's weird. It's definitely weird. And I said before, I thought there was a good chance all the elves are really just clones created by Podemos. If so, maybe Anna is just a clone that, didn't come out quite right. She had more human features, so they just called her half-elf? Maybe? I'm not sure about that. But anyway, Anna believes the reason why the elves believe so strongly in their own supremacy is to cover up for their own inferiority complex, because all elves are born destined to serve Podemos for their entire lives. They are his slaves, they are his property, and the only reason why Anna wasn't killed was because she was his property, and they couldn't break their master's possession without his approval. So when she was finally thrown out of the village, she figured it was on his orders, and then, she kind of wandered around for a bit, not really sure why she was living, until she met King Onlight, which I think was Shun's grandfather or great-grandfather. And on the king's deathbed, he entrusted Anna with looking after his son, and she was just so overwhelmingly touched by this that she decided to serve the family for the rest of her life. And she just takes great pride in choosing who she served, unlike the elves who are destined to serve Podemos, though, she is still basically doing what the elves are doing, basically devoting herself fully to one person, swearing absolute loyalty to this one person above all else. So, I don't know, I find that weird. I definitely find that weird. At the very least, it's definitely an unhealthy relationship, especially now, given that, she feels so guilty over betraying Shun when she was brainwashed by Hugo, and ever since then, she's been utterly helpless. She was too weak to fight alongside them in the labyrinth, and now that they're finally here in the elf village, while Shun is supposed to be focused on preparing for war, he's more worried about her and how the elves are being so mean to her. But anyway, they all meet up to have this big meeting, and Hyrance basically suggests the reason why the elves are so defensive when they suggest turning off teleportation points is because the elves are actually incapable of turning them off. Basically, in order to create a teleportation point that not only crosses space, but they have to pass through that giant barrier, it must be so complex that turning it off back on again would take weeks or even months, or just wouldn't be possible at all. Which definitely raised some questions, so Shun asked Anna if she knows anything about the barrier, teleportation, or anything like that, and she apologizes that she doesn't, at which point Shun feels bad about making her feel bad, so he apologizes, which makes her feel bad, so she apologizes to him for making him feel bad to apologize to her, and that just goes on for a very, very long time. Anyways, then they discuss, the actual problems when the war starts, and namely that would be Sophia, who is a true monster, who can completely cancel out all magic. And then even beyond her, there are still two others that are unaccounted for, Koyoya and Kusama, and Shun is just really worried about the possibility of having to fight Koyoya, his old friend, the one who would eventually become Wrath, because they were best friends back in Japan. Him, Kati, and Wrath were as close as could be, and he's described as having a gentle personality and avoided standing out in conflict, which just so very, very weird. His name is freaking Wrath now. Meanwhile, Kusama, the ninja, was the class clown who would run errands for anyone, and they think there's a very good chance he might be on the side of the administrators simply because they're tricking him, which, oh, I love it, I freaking love it. But anyway, after the meeting, Faye's stressed out, she can't sleep, she decides to go for a walk, and she's thinking, okay, there is no way on God's green earth that Shun has any chance of beating Sophia. She is a true monster, and nobody realized it. Nobody realized just how class Shun truly is by her. Which means that when the time comes, Faye needs to be the one to stop the fighting, to essentially surrender. She accepts that even now before the battle begins. And then she gets really freaked out when she hears a bunch of elves laughing, which weirds her out because up to this point, she's never even seen an elf smile before. And as it turns out, the reason why the elves are smiling, the reason why they're laughing, is because one elf punched Anna, and they're all pointing at her and laughing now, which, yeah, elves are awful. Elves are truly awful. But thankfully, Faye steps in and is able to calmly de-escalate the situation, and even gets the elf to apologize to Anna, and she only slightly breaks his shoulder. Oh, I love you, Faye. I freaking love you. You are seriously the MVP of the Shun arc this volume. And when Anna thanks her, Faye responds by saying, only a useless moron would stand around without doing anything to help, and that's directed directly at Anna's bodyguards. Yes, Anna's bodyguards were standing right there while she was being assaulted, while she was being attacked and mocked, and did absolutely nothing to help it, because as it turns out, elves are super racist. And Faye's lines here are absolutely perfect, as they're basically forcing the guards to promise to do a better job protecting Anna in the future, or admit that their own race is stupid and childish, which, oh, I love you, Faye. I freaking love you. And as this is happening, Faye thinks back to Wakaba, the girl she bullied over some stupid boy back in Japan, and no matter what she did to her, Wakaba would always just ignore it, and eventually it just stopped being about the guy, and became more about Faye wanting to be seen, wanting to be recognized, wanting to be acknowledged by Wakaba, but it just never happened. So when she was born in this world as a dragon, she thought it was a punishment, and she wanted so desperately, so badly to apologize, but then when she found out Wakaba was dead just a few weeks before this, she realized she's probably gonna have to feel guilty for the rest of her life. Oh, I love Faye's arc this volume. I freaking love Faye's arc this volume. Really, the entire series. Just Faye, constantly feeling like she's being punished, constantly feeling like she needs to make amends for a crime she didn't even really do, for a crime that didn't even really bother the victim. But anyway, then Faye realized that Anna sees Shun as her child and has maternal feelings for him. And at that point, Faye realized, okay, there's a fairly good chance she'll die for Shun, which is going to be a major headache for me. And that is literally exactly what happened. Good for you, Faye. You are really the MVP of this volume. I mean, like I said, in the Shun timeline. In the Kumoko storyline, Butler's definitely the MVP, or Kumoko, or Ariel. Honestly, a lot of MVPs in that storyline. Anyway, though, next day, they're all waiting at that teleportation point because they realize something's gonna happen that day. And then Kusama teleports in. He's the same hyperactive kid he was back in Japan. And because he knows who they are, because he knows their name, they realize, okay, you're our enemy, and they try to stop him, but they just really, really can't, because he has the ninja skill, which basically lets him create duplicates of himself, and then switch places with duplicates he creates at will, basically making it impossible for them to stop him. And then as he teleports away, he throws a magic sword into the air, which has the self-destruct ability, and Hirons basically has to pull Shun out of the building, because Shun tries to go back in to save the elves, but yeah, the elves are just a bit too slow to escape being, literally turned to ash. And after that, Shun tries to revive them, but Hiron stops him for quite a few reasons. First off, like I said, they are literally ash, and while the mercy skill is powerful, it probably, requires a mostly intact body. Secondly, Hiron's just really doesn't trust the elves, and doesn't want them to know that Shun can revive the dead. And finally, the battle has just started, and Hirons really doesn't want Shun wasting all his MP. And as Shun is digesting all of that, he's suddenly hit by a torrent of fear as he senses overwhelming power. And then the barrier that's been protecting the elves for generations, for millennia, suddenly pops like a giant bubble. And then the war begins. Huzzah! And then there's the chapter, Because I'm Their Teacher, which takes place from Misoka's point of view, and starts out with her saying, I am a weak person. Oh god, poor Misoka, poor Misoka. As she basically explains how her student roster skill works. Basically, she can see the past, present, and future of her students. The past basically just says where they're born. The present shows their current condition in one word. They're healthy, they're sick, they're fatigued, etc. And the future gives a rough estimate of how/when they'll die. As for Hugo, it says he'll be killed in action in the elf forest, which told her the barrier would be broken and Hugo would find a way to get inside. But the other elves just didn't listen to her because, the barrier's protected them forever. There's no way some stupid human would find a way to overcome it. And when Hugo does die, his name will disappear from the student roster, just like the other four. And I do think this is a clue as to why Misoka thought Kumoko was dead, because it says that when a student dies, their name disappears from the roster. Kumoko did technically die as a demon lord. Her body was destroyed, but she reincarnated again in this fantasy world as a newborn spider baby, so I don't think the skill really, ever took into account someone dying and then coming back to life. But anyway, then we actually get a backstory to Misoka, and it actually differs quite a bit from the one that Shun gave back in Volume 1, because back then Shun just said, oh, Misoka became a teacher because she wanted a young husband, whereas here she says from a young age, she always wanted to be a teacher who could share a laugh with her students, and to achieve that, she studied games, manga, anime, the internet, even developing a whole new persona that'd be easier to befriend. So yeah, this really isn't who Misoka is, this fun-loving, happy-go-lucky person. That's all just a facade she put on so her students would be happier with her, so she could easily befriend her students and make their lives easier. And then she died and was reborn as a baby, and because of her student roster skills, she found out that within 3 years, 10 of her students would die. Yeah, I saw a lot of anime-only viewers giving Misoka a lot of slack for what she did for teaming up with Podemos when he is so very, very clearly evil, but seriously, 3 years, she would still be a baby. In that time, almost half her students would be dead. She didn't really have any other choice than teaming up with Podemos, And to make things worse, there's a coming day where a lot of students are all going to die, with the cause of death being listed as being divested of skills, which, as best as you can tell, means the administrators are going to kill them on that day because they have so many juicy skills the administrators want. In fact, every time she brought a kid into the elf village, their cause of death changed and no longer said divested of skills. Instead, their cause of death is left blank, and Misoka's best guess for that is it means they're going to outlive her, because the day where a bunch of her students are going to be divested of their skills all at once is coming within the next year, and Misoka also has a bunch of skills, so she assumes that, she's going to die in that day as well. And, she doesn't know what to do. She can use skill elimination to get rid of all her skills, but that would make her an enemy of the elves, and she needs her skills to stop Hugo, so her only real hope, her only thought, is basically to fight the administrators using her skills, even though she is just hopelessly outclassed. I mean, seriously, Hugo completely kicked her butt, and Hugo is, way weaker than Sophia, and Sophia is probably way weaker than the administrators, so, yeah, Misoka, you really don't understand the scale you're dealing with here. And so even though it breaks her heart, she accepts that she must be hated by her students because the skill student roster is cursed, and if she tells any of the students any information she got from it, that something bad will happen. She doesn't know exactly what it is, but she assumes there's a good chance that they'll probably die, so she can't tell them anything and must just accept her duty as a teacher to be hated by them. And then she goes to kill Hugo because that is also her duty as his teacher. Oh, that was a cool line. That was such a cool line. And then the battle begins. Hugo versus Misoka, and of course Hugo tells Sophia not to interfere. And then Yuri shows up and does a full half-page rant about how the elves are heretics and need to be killed, need to be wiped off the earth, and how if Misoka prays for forgiveness from God, maybe she'll be allowed to live. Which, honestly, I'm not sure if this is just, Yuri's regular old religious craziness, or if this is a result of her being brainwashed by Hugo and going extra crazy. Both are, probably equally likely at this point, but anyway, Misoka thinks, she has a pretty good chance against Hugo because she did trip him with all his stats and all his skills fairly recently, so he can't be all that strong, but he is fairly powerful, which she realizes is because of his equipment. His sword is made from a black dragon, a very, very rare creature, and his armor is made of rare monsters, and she thinks that's the reason why he's so strong right now. He's using the equipment to make up for his low stats, but then she realized he's way too fast to have low stats, and he explains that his power is because of the greed skill, which grants him a small amount of his victims' skill, stats, and skill points, though the key word there is definitely small amount, and in order for him to become as strong as he is, he must have killed dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. He has truly stained his hands with blood. And so Misoka prepares the finishing blow to take him down, using her arrows to create a barrier that sucked out all the air and create a huge pressure difference that would quickly kill him. It's a spell of her own original creation because even though this world isn't Earth and has different physics than Earth, people still need to breathe. Unfortunately, Sophia frees Hugo from the barrier, and then he stabs Misoka and just goes super crazy, explaining that he wants to torture all the elves and the students in front of her just to make her suffer more, so yeah, truly crazy man. Thankfully then Shun arrives, yay! Unfortunately though, Shun is still an idiot, and he says he must face Hugo by himself. Why? Seriously, Shun, why do you have to fight Hugo by yourself? It's a very bad idea. I mean, Misoka is basically saying the same thing, saying that she has to deal with Hugo by herself because, she's his teacher, she's responsible for all his actions, but Shun just has much less an argument to stand on here. And, then he actually praises Hugo, and he's fairly strong. Most of his stats around 3,000. His appraisal is level 10, which I'm very surprised by that. Very surprised by that. I mean, I'm guessing that's because of greed. He killed a bunch of people who had appraisal and managed to gain some of the appraisal, proficiency from them. His overreading is level 3. His Demon Lord skill is level 1, which, oh, of course it is. Of freaking course it is. I mean, seriously, he must have killed hundreds of people by this point, so yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense why he'd have the Demon Lord skill. And his Taboo skill is up to level 9, which, interesting. Very interesting. I'm very curious what would have happened if Hugo would actually, got up to level 10 and seen the truth of the world. I mean, he already has the title Master of Madness, so I feel like, it wouldn't affect him all that much. He's already kind of crazy. And then they fight, kinda. I mean, it's not really so much a fight as it is Shun just keeps knocking him to the ground over and over again. Because as it turns out, Hugo is, just so much weaker than him. Maybe it's in terms of stats, maybe it's in terms of standing, maybe it's in terms of, actual practical sword fighting experience, but it's not much of a match at all, and Shun very easily wins, at which point Sophia explains that she has no further use for Hugo, and she was basically just using him and the Imperial Army as a distraction, so the Demon Lord's army could show up and wipe out the elves. Yay! So Shun, Katya, Oka, Hyrens, and Anna decide to take on Sophia, while the adventurers take on the butler. And yeah, they do not stand a chance. They do not stand any chance at all. Even after they land a coordinated attack, with each one of them landing the perfect blow, and she was able to actually, get his sword to hit her, it does absolutely zero damage because she somehow managed to cover her entire body in hard dragon-like scales, meaning both magic and physical attacks are completely and utterly useless. And at this point, Faye lands. Yeah, Faye's kind of been flying around this whole time, and Shun's wondering, okay, Faye, where have you been? Why haven't you been helping us? And she surrenders. Yeah, she knew even before the battle began that they had absolutely no chance of beating Sophia, thanks to her dragon's intuition, and she also knew that Shun wouldn't have listened to her if she actually said, hey Shun, let's not fight Sophia, we're gonna lose. So she basically just wanted to wait for a moment where Shun would realize himself that he's outclassed, and then convince him to surrender then. At which point Shun realizes he led his friends into a battle they had no chance of winning, and says, I'm so ashamed I could die, which, it's just really a great moment for Shun, a really great moment of growth for Shun, but he just completely and utterly forgets that in like 2 seconds when he decides to keep fighting against Sophia, even though it means he and his classmates are probably all gonna die. Bad Shun, bad Shun. Anyway, though, at that point, the adventurers show up again as they have beaten the butler, or at least beaten a body double of him who's much, much weaker than the original, and the butler apologizes and... Oh god, Sophia's response, you're always protecting me, so don't say you're worthless. She says it with such a gentle expression that Shun is actually left in shock that Sophia can be such a kind person. And then they all decide to start fighting again, even though it's such an utterly bad idea. But thankfully, Wrath shows up and is able to take down 2 adventurers easily. So easily. And Shun is just utterly shocked by this, as he sees his old friend Kyoya Sasajime standing before him with the same face he had back in Japan. Well, mostly the same face. He has horns now, which Shun interprets to mean that he is a monster who managed to take on a human form like Faye did. Based on the name of the chapter, I think he's actually an ogre, so interesting. Very interesting. And he tries to explain, he really does try to explain exactly what it is they're doing, exactly what their plan is, exactly why they, caused all this war and devastation and all that. Starting with saying that was, only for Misoka to interject and say, Shun, don't forget they destroyed your kingdom. Don't forget they killed your brother. Like, seriously, Misoka? Seriously. I was really on your side this volume, but then as you're saying this, as you're just trying to emotionally manipulate Shun, oh god, that just left a very bad taste in my mouth. And then the elves show up and plead with Shun to come with them to stop the demon lord. And I love at this moment they suddenly start becoming, reverent to Shun, reverent to Hero, saying, Sir Hero, please, we need your help. Yeah, now it's Sir Hero. Now when you actually need his help, it's freaking Sir Hero. Before this, you're basically looking at him like a freaking insect, and now you're calling him Sir. Thankfully, Wrath shows up and then stabs that elf, and then Sophia starts manipulating some red liquid, which dissolves the elf and leaves a rather foul smell behind. And then just gets really bloody, as Wrath starts shooting swords everywhere, as he pulls swords from spatial storage, fires them with Expel, and then detonates them when they hit the elves, basically turning them into freaking missiles. So, yeah, don't take off Wrath. Taking off Wrath is a very bad idea. And for some stupid reason, Shun decides to try and stop Wrath from killing the evil elves, and Wrath's response is to try and knock out Shun, but Anna throws herself in the middle to protect Shun, desperate to make up for being brainwashed, and so she dies. God dang it, Anne. Seriously, that would not have been a fatal blow. He wasn't actually trying to kill Shun, and you died for nothing. Thankfully, though, Shun has the mercy skill. He's able to revive her. Unfortunately, though, this brings his taboo skill up to level 10, which causes intense pain that just utterly confuses Wrath and Sophia as they're trying to figure out what exactly just happened. And while they're distracted, Hugo decides to use the opportunity to attack Sophia because he's really mad that she manipulated him, and even calls her by her old nickname from back in Japan, Rihoko, a real horror girl, which ticks her off so much she plans on murdering him, but she doesn't get the chance because a slim white hand grabs Hugo by the back of the head, and then something wriggles out of his ear, which as best I can tell, was a spider that was being used to control him some way, because he didn't actually recognize Tagua before either, so curious, very curious about that. I mean, how much of this was actually Hugo, and how much of it was actually, Kumoko controlling him? I'm not sure. But regardless, Hugo then crumples to the ground like a puppet whose strings have been cut, and then a girl appears, one who Sophia recognized as her master, one who Hyrens recognizes as the one who killed Julius, his best friend, one who Faye recognized as the girl she bullied, Hiro Akaba, a classmate who was utterly unapproachable, and who Misoka told them time and time again was definitely dead, and Misoka just stares off in complete and utter shock, trying to figure out how Akaba could be there when her skill told her she was dead, and then Wakaba bows her head and says, "It's been a long time, Misoka." Which is just so creepy. I mean, I'm sure in Kumoko's own mind, she's being nice, she's being polite here, she's greeting her former teacher, but it just comes off as so creepy, and I freaking love it. And then we have one final scene as Ariel reminisces about the 10 very eventful years she spent with White before standing before Podemos and his army of Gloria's giant fighting robots. Of course, Ariel's not alone either, as she has an army of giant spiders and a Queen Terratact, and White is off keeping the hero busy, so she has a fairly good chance of beating all these tin cans until Podemos activates a barrier that cancels out the very system that governs the world. But a silly little thing like that won't stop her, and the war begins. Huzzah! And that is where Volume 5 of the light novel ends. Wow, I've been talking for a long time. Not just the video. 5 very, very long videos as I've discussed everything light novel cut from the anime. And I gotta say, in terms of the cut content, I've definitely seen worse. I've definitely seen worse. I mean, I think the Kumoko storyline is fairly well done. I think they could have done, more to show her social anxiety, more show how bad she is at dealing with people, more show just, the skills, the system, how it all works. I would like to see that, but it was definitely followable. They definitely hit all the key points fairly well. The Shun timeline, though, that was much worse. I mean, so much of the characters, their storylines, their backgrounds, their motivations was cut out, so the characters were just so much less likable, and that's definitely disappointing, because these are some of the most interesting characters in the entire series. I mean, Shun, just time and time again, being so utterly rigid, refusing to back down, refusing to do anything other than what a hero should do in this moment, even if it means he's gonna die, even if it means his friends are gonna die, just... Oh, I hate him so badly, but I'm sure that's leading somewhere interesting. Katya coming to grips with her new persona, her new being, having transformed into a girl in this new world, and, basically accepting she's not the same person she was back in Japan. That's an amazing storyline, and something the anime really didn't touch all that much, or even at all. Misoka's deal with Podemos, I mean, like I said, I saw some people online, anime-onlys, who said that, Misoka was an idiot for agreeing to work with him, but she really didn't have any other choice. That was a very important detail there, that within 3 years, 10 of her students would be dead, and within 20 years, most of them would be dead. So it was either team up with Podemos or let her students die, and she chose the best option she could. And as a result, Podemos is now basically holding all of her students as hostage, and she can't actually do anything. She can't fight back against him. She can't believe that Podemos is lying to her, that Podemos is, doing something evil, because that would basically mean, she has no hope, she has no chance of saving her students. And she is just in such a bad situation right now. Oh my god, poor Misoka. Poor Misoka. But please let me tell us down below. What do you think was changed? Is there anything you're glad was changed? Anything you wish truly hadn't been changed? Seriously, if there was one scene, one moment from the light novel you wish had really made into the anime, what would it have been? I'm actually rather curious to see what people think about that. And yeah, this is my last cut content video, I guess. At least until, or I guess if we get season 2 of the anime, which... iffy, very, very iffy. I mean, the CGI just turned off so very many people, and I really had no problem with it until, last couple episodes, we actually had the armies of humans fighting one another. That was bad. That was just so bad and so poorly done. And weirdly enough, the 2D animation was worse. Somehow the 2D animation was worse. Just weird shots, weird angles, weird animations, just a lot of weird choices were made in actually making this anime, which... Curious, very, very curious, but the storyline was so good, the characters were so good, even without so much cut out, I really did love it. I really am hoping to get a second season, but I'm not sure about that. If you're interested in more cut content video, I also did a cut content series on Arifureta. I've done 5 or 6 videos covering all the content that was cut out of Arifureta, and when season 2 starts up again in January, I will definitely be covering that again. I'm super excited for that. But thank you everyone for getting this far, for watching all these videos, or even just this video. I truly do appreciate it. Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, peace!